You're listening to 88.7 WLUW Chicago Sound Alliance, broadcasting from the campus of Loyola University. It's live from the Heartland, featuring hosts Katy Hogan and Michael James. On today's show, we'll be having conversations with Coya Paz, director and producer on Free Street Theater, and filmmaker Chris Buddy. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Hey, thank you, Rolling Stones and brothers and sisters, hermanos y hermanos, bienvenido, and welcome to another Live from the Heartland, broadcasting from Chicago. We're coming into your home, we're coming into your lives. This is Michael James. I'm here with my pal, Katy Hogan, and our buddy, Thom Clark, is out in California somewhere. I assume he's listening in, so good morning to you, Thom. Good morning to everybody, and good morning to the Yellen family out there in El Paso, and Grandma Lola. Everybody's having a good day. Let's get going with a really good show. We've got a little bit of talk about gambling coming on, and we're going to start off with some Free Street Theater. Ready to roll. Good morning, Kate.
Welcome back, Michael.
I'm glad to be back. Always good to be home.
And happy solstice edition of Live from the Heartland. Why don't you fill us in on what went on down there on the border for your how manyth time
the
doing
different
basketball?
Figures, 22 years, 17, I'm not sure, but I know I've been taking pictures since 2002. That's probably when
basketball in the barrio.
Basketball in the barrio, El Paso and Juarez. And I go down there almost every year, and it's a camp for kids 5 to 10 years old in the Segundo Barrio, about 400 yards from the border. And we had 100 kids from all over, and they do their drills and their basketball stuff. They have poetry, they have storytelling, they have music stations. It's a comprehensive camp. Mm-hmm. And we had a really good time, and had hoped to go across the border and to check out more stuff going on around this immigration crisis, supposedly, and did not. But we did drive around, went by a Annunciation House, I think it's called. Ruben Garcia, he's a priest, and they deal with they have 28 different places, 100 meals a meal, 3 times a day, lots of volunteers, 28 coordinators. The response to this man-made crisis is really impressive by the people of El Paso. And those of you who listen to the show regularly know that Connie Voisin, who lives up there in Las Cruces, was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about the citizen response all across the Southwest. It seems like an awful lot of people know this is wrong, what's going on with the Drumpf, and are trying to make it a better situation.
Mm-hmm. Did any talk of that happen in the course of basketball in the barrio? Did you talk with the local parents or the kids themselves about what's going on?
No, not with the kids,
really.
But I certainly did talk to a few other people about stuff in general. And usually Beto O'Rourke and his family show up at camp. He did not this year. And
he's got other things to do.
I know, I understand. Yeah. There's a lot of Beto signs in El Paso.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Well, I think it's an amazing program. I think it's great good fortune that you happened upon it.
I was so glad. I mean, Russ Bradford was a customer at the Heartland Cafe, and his brother lived with our friend Bob Rudnick's brother. So Russ actually wrote for the Heartland Journal in the early days, and that's, I assume, how I met him, was at the Heartland. And later he invited me to come to Basketball in the Barrio, where he had set up this program to honor a fellow named Rocky Galarza. Russ was a coach at UTEP, and he felt it was not right for coaches to charge big bucks for kids to learn basketball. So he set up a camp that costs $1 for 3 days, if you can afford it.
Yeah.
And it's a really a wonderful program, and it's been going for quite a while, 25 years now.
It's very impressive. Very impressive. I'm glad for you that you're still going down there getting all those pictures.
Can still walk.
I'm glad you could still walk as well. But you can't stay away from that microphone, I know that.
Well, it's close to me now because of the sight lines. For those of you who want to watch us in a week or so, it'll be up on youtube.com/heartlandmedia and probably up on livefromtheheartland.com. So we are looking for some more video interns and people who like to shoot photos and shoot video and help load them onto YouTube.
Okay. That was a little job commercial for y'all.
We need to do that, Kate. We need some more people.
Okay. You were on the border where the words concentration camp are being used to describe the conditions that people are being kept in. You did not see any of, you didn't get close to that stuff, right?
No, I did not see that. No, I just saw. I was down by the border, but everything was pretty quiet. There are a number of places where you can cross over, and I'm not sure of the procedure, but they are definitely. As I said earlier, I was told that there are 28 different places that they're serving 100 meals at a time, 3 times a day, and these are to people who are being released onto the street by the Border Patrol people, and then they have to make their own way to find their relatives or wherever they're going.
So there's a lot about this that we don't know, and we promise
it's changing
y'all,
every day.
Yeah, that we're going to keep looking at it because I do know that a flyer appeared on a couple of neighborhood places yesterday calling the conditions or calling what is happening in Rogers Park, thanks to Heartland Alliance taking in some underage kids who were separated from their parents down there. And they've been housing them and feeding them and whatever all.
And they're a good outfit.
They are a good outfit, and they were just smeared with this concentration camp label.
But you notice on that flyer, I did see that too, the people who are calling it a concentration camp and calling for a demonstration, there's no sign of who they are.
No,
they don't say
identify
what political group they're from or who they are.
No.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. In any case, meanwhile...
Lori Lightfoot took a good position. You had a way of describing it on the way down. Go for it. Harold. She did her Harold and her best Harold.
She did her best impression of Harold Washington and his response to ICE back in the 80s, where he basically pretty much stood on the steps of the post office and said, "You can't come in here." But this is the thing that's weird about this ICE raid thing. I was going to jump to something else. That's why I hesitated, of course,
I know, but
Michael.
I keep it in a continuity here.
Yeah, that's right. That continuity thing. Anyway, where did you ever hear of ICE raids being, telescoped or whatever they...
Telegraphed
ahead of time? I mean, there's something totally weird about this. In any case, in our neighborhood, people are activated and are responding as we would expect Rogers Parkers to respond. They're going door to door today and tomorrow, canvassing to let people know about the rights that people have. For example, you do not have to open your door. You can remain silent. You don't sign anything. You record everything that happens. And ultimately, we all should be fighting back. We have a lot of people living in our neighborhood who've been there 20, 30, 40 years who might even be threatened by this activity, and there's no way we're going to let that happen if we have any possible way to interrupt it. So good for Lori Lightfoot. Make it stick. The rest of us go to Protect Our P and sign up to help with the canvas or any other way that you can. In another, meanwhile, warmongering from the current occupant continues, sending waves of fear and anger across populations in many parts of the world. And what we wonder is what this phony and dangerous saber rattling serves. Who does it serve? And what do we want to know?
Even his base is not real excited about another war.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not quite sure what his plan is on this, and if he really is sincere, they're saying that it was 10 minutes from the airstrike that he had permitted. He backed off of it. I got my doubts. It seems all staged and theater kind of oriented to me.
Yes, as our first guest said to us before the start of the show, he's all theater. Feel free to chime in, Coya, into the banter now that we've outed you as being in the room. But also I'd like to mention that there's still no word on how we're planning to protect the vote from foreign interference, just in case you were wondering. And this week, the current resident announced his campaign for re-election at the same time that more members of Congress, including our own state congressional representative, Jan Schakowsky, moved toward impeachment proceedings.
And tell me, I'm a little confused. Tell me what's going on with the Smollett case.
Everyone's confused about that. But right now, the upper hand seems to be with those who side with the police, who were ticked off at our state's attorney, Kim Foxx, for her actions which some of which are in need of explanation to the general public. She did call for an independent investigator a couple months ago. This coming from a judge has more of a smack in the face to her about it, because the proceedings came about because of a woman whose name I'm not pulling up right now, some Irish white girl like myself, who put some kind of challenge in legally on behalf of her friends in the police department.
I got to say, I have been a supporter of Kim Foxx, and I am continuing to support her. I think she's a step above whatever we've had in that office before. I think probably this is a little skewed, though, and a little whatever happened. I'm waiting to find out. Someone to explain
we all are. We all are.
Okay, more to come.
This week, too, we kick off our campaign in the neighborhood because there's 2 nights of debates, because that's what it takes to cover 20 flipping candidates. And so the Democrats are kicking off their campaign with 2 nights of debate. We're going to have debate watching up in Rogers Park because that is our want. The first night on Wednesday will be in the Glenwood Bar, and the second night, Thursday night, will be in our public house. The fact that this is happening the same week as Pride Week is a little tricky because those are 2 of the most famous and used gay bars in our neighborhood. But they were welcomed watching the debate. And so you all are welcome. And that is actually co-sponsored by Network 49 and the Democratic Party of the 49th Ward.
Back together again.
Well, for this, for stuff like this, yes.
Katy, what's going on with the city's attempt to move an event up from the south side to Montrose Beach?
Okay, first
of all,
a lot
of people are concerned about
this is a serious problem. The Montrose Beach Dunes and Montrose Point are one of the highest quality parcels in the Chicago Park District. It's a 40-acre green space that offers refuge from the pressures of urban life. When you get far enough out on that, you can't even hear Lakeshore Drive. But it has also been, for many decades now, a habitat for nesting and migratory birds, a pretty much of a living classroom for students, photographers, nature lovers. I remember bringing Hal and Cade out there.
Those are 2 of my kids.
When they were very, very little in the winter to see a pair of snowy owls this big. You can't see that, folks, but they were this big.
That's about 2.5, 3 feet almost.
Out on the pier at Montrose, they spent a whole month, the month of February, out there some 20 years ago or whatever.
Hanging out.
And people went for months, taking pictures, saying hi, being wowed, etc. So it's been like that for a while. The dunes contain many state-listed plant and bird species, and it's a globally imperiled wetland type of living creature that is being given life there. So it's a beautiful natural area, and it's adjacent to a very large public beach.
So what's happening?
Well, something called Mamby on the Beach.
Mamby on the Beach.
Mamby on the Beach is... it's basically an event outfit. I looked at their website. They throw parties. And it's mostly white kids, okay? This is a Lollapalooza-esque short version, 2 days and nights, where they take over that very pristine area with 50,000, possibly up to 50,000 jumping around rock and rollers. And who collects the cash from that? Not you and I.
Jam
but
Productions.
you and I pay to clean it up after, and we lose whatever we lose in the course of it. So the reaction of the neighbors has been, I think, stellar. They're up in arms. The bird watching folks, the local advisory council, and the Audubon Society has now piped up. The Audubon Society has a petition on their site that y'all should sign. I first have the question, what was wrong with 41st Street? That's where they had it last year. And if you go on their website, you can see they put tents up. They've got all kind of places to walk around and buy things. They do fireworks. And at 41st Street, maybe that's a bare enough, unpeopled enough that it worked. Why are they needing to move it? I'm wondering. Does it have anything to do with Chicago's incredible legacy of racism? I don't know. but I bet it does.
What department in the city handles this stuff?
Well,
It's the Park District.
It's Park District, and it may concern the Mayor's Office of Special Events, but I'm not sure. It's Jam Productions, and that's a local group, and they should respond to community pressure, period. I mean, this is...
Stay tuned. We'll keep you
Yeah,
posted
we will
when we know
definitely
more.
keep you posted. What else we got here?
Now, let's get going with our guests.
That's Monty and Rose, the piping plover pair, by the way. That's what they've been named. They must be saved. Okay, I think that's it. Oh, wait. Youth drumming today at 1441 Morris, part of the New Rhythm folks and music in Chicago.
A lot of activity on Morse Avenue these days. We got a new alderwoman there, opened her office. Mm-hmm. And I guess down the street is where Heartland Alliance is keeping the kids on Morse Avenue. So keep your eyes on Morse Avenue these days.
Pride Week kicks off. Party safely, young'uns. Please be safe and care for each other. June 29th, Cop Watch Workshop run by Protect RP is next week at 9 a.m. in Living Water Church. And we're just going to tell you, you're listening to WLUW Chicago 88.7 FM, WLUW.org. Come back and hear from Coya Paz right now. Chris Williamson.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, folks, for whatever off tune I did, but that was Chris Williamson singing Song of the Soul. Chris Williamson was a big name in women's music in the 80s, and I don't know, it was just so much fun to run across her as I was putting together our script last night that Coya, I just used you as an opportunity to play Chris. I admit, welcome, Coya Paz.
Thank you for having me.
It's a real honor. Your work is pretty stellar and kind of madcap, girl. A little on the madcap side.
Yes.
You are the artistic director at Free Street Theater, right?
Yes.
Among other things, you also run the theater department.
I am the chair of the theater studies department at DePaul University.
Yeah. Okay. And today. Is it today? No, it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow, oh my gosh.
Tomorrow, they got a bunch of stuff going on. Lots of stuff going on.
You're doing 50 things in 50 wards. How does that happen?
So, some context. Free Street turns 50 this summer, and we decided to celebrate. Free Street was founded in the wake of the 1968 riots as a way of thinking. Rebellion, sure, I know. That really, though, especially after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, really devastated parts of the city that I'll note the city never rebuilt. You can still go to burned out lots. And so, back in 1969, the Illinois Arts Council had this amazing idea that what could heal economically and racially segregated city was free street theater.
Indeed.
So they gave somebody named Patrick Henry quite a chunk of change in 1969 to start this company. And the early version, I always joke that whatever your stereotype about late 60s, early 70s theater is, we were that. Lots of leotards and long hair and afros and tambourines singing
and
Power
scarves,
to People songs.
Scarves around your neck, around your hips.
Dancing in circles. But it really was meant to be a joyous experience where people from across the city and in spaces across the city could be together in live space, which was pretty radical at the time, and I think is still radical today. Our work is a little bit different now. Our mission still holds racial and economic segregation as well as joy and justice at its core. Chicago, we know, is such a segregated city, the most segregated city by every measure. And most communities in the city don't have any formal arts investment or formal arts institutions. So if you are a theater maker, for example, living on the Southwest side, you might have to travel upwards of an hour to get to your job to rehearse at a theater on the Northeast Corridor. If you're an audience, same. So Free Street has for 50 years performed all over the city. We perform in parks and plazas and public spaces, and our commitment is to hire from the communities we're working in, rehearse in the communities we're working in. And so to celebrate our birthday, long story, we decided that we would perform in all 50 wards of the city in one day. So I laugh every time I say that because
it was
bananas.
Your idea.
Well, it was,
I heard your exec director saying our artistic director piped up with 50 wards, 50 years. Let's do it.
Well, I actually will blame somebody else for this. The artist, Quina Barrett, who is a director and actress around the city, we had a big meeting at Free Street to sort of brainstorm what should we do for our 50th. And she kind of, as a joke, said we should do 50 performances to celebrate 50 years. And, you know, when you're hanging out with people you like, you can rile each other up. And suddenly that turned, I don't know how it turned into, we'll do it in one day. And realizing that Chicago has 50 wards, so that seemed like a good way to think about parceling it out. I will say that I've learned so much about wards that I hadn't really paid attention to before. And most importantly is that the way our ward maps are drawn is really, I think, to divide communities.
Totally
where
wackadoodle.
That may
some
change.
neighborhoods have. I did see that, that there's a proposal to redraw the ward maps independently, which I think is great. Little Village has 5 wards. Many communities in the city have 3 wards. You know, so people keep asking us, when are you coming to Brighton Park? And we'd say, well, we're not. You know, we could be in your ward and not in your neighborhood. And we could be in your neighborhood but not in your ward. But we're really excited that I took a serious turn, which is my way.
Would we call it gerrymandering?
I would.
Wards? I mean, it definitely.
100%.
It happens on the national level where, like, a city like Austin has 3 or 4 different congressional districts.
Yeah.
So you really keep some people from voting or having influence.
No, it's basically a politician's move.
Yeah.
It's maintaining power, and black, brown, and white are all part of making this happen for many, many years now. And wait till Lori Lightfoot tries to change that. There will be all manner of stuff. But back to theater.
So what we decided to do is that we commissioned 10 directors, lead artists, to make 10 performances that will each go to 5 wards. And all of the performances deal with the same questions. You know, what does it take? What does your survival require in the city? And what does your joy require in the city? We're also making a full-length play about this later in this summer, which will tour to public parks, called Still Here, Manifestos for Joy and Survival. Just saying, you know,
Wonderful.
Developers plan this city in a way that doesn't serve our communities. And so what would it look like if we planned our own communities and we were not constantly being displaced and developed out of our communities? So that all sounds very serious, but I promise that our absolute commitment is to create spaces where we can celebrate each other, even as we acknowledge systemic problems.
La Habana, Madrid.
So
I just saw it this
Oh,
week.
isn't it so good?
It's
Sandra
amazing.
Delgado. That's not a Free Street show, but I saw it in its first run, and it really is a beautiful piece.
But you just reminded me of it by talking about, urban removal,
yeah.
which was the case for the Puerto Rican community.
Well,
that they
some
covered.
theater is like kind of escape from reality. Let you take a breath and get away. Clearly, you're not that. You are face reality and have a good time doing it.
Yeah, we're definitely not escapist theater, though we're quite funny, I think. Our work tends to be humorous. We're a little bit snarky. We try not to be very earnest. I think sometimes, for me, I have a hard time sometimes relaxing into a performance or a show when it feels like simple escapism, where it's not acknowledging the realities of my life. But when somebody acknowledges the real ways in which things are hard and then says, but hey, let's find the humor and let's find the joy and let's find our community anyway, that makes it much easier for me to engage. And so that is how we structure a lot of our work.
So you found how many people all told to work with these 10 different directors?
We have about 80 artists that are working on this project, all paid. Free Street, I always joke, has the worst business model in the world because we offer all of our performances free or pay what you can, and we pay every single person who works with us. We don't take volunteers for longer than 2 hours.
And you're 50 years old.
We have lasted 50 years, yeah.
So that's something to be said. We're trying to, when you say making the city the way we want to, I think we're aware now, certainly in our neighborhood with development pressures, we need a new model, one that doesn't say the almighty dollar and former practical wisdom on those things are not necessarily applicable. going into the future?
Yeah, I do think that we could all use new ways of thinking about how we make our cultural ecosystems, also our city. I will say that Free Street, although we are turning 50, really Free Street has been 3 different theater companies, I would say, under 3 very different forms of leadership. So our founder, Patrick Henry, ran the company in one way. Then for a long time, the artistic director was Ron Bagansky, who now runs a brilliant arts organization for young people called Neuro Kitchen Arts Collective. So if people are looking for places to put their children this summer and are interested in this Free Street model, they are certainly carrying on that legacy. Cool. And then the board hired me about 6 years ago to reimagine the company's work for the Chicago that we are today.
How do you handle the pull between the amount of time you need to put in on Free Street Theater and your work as the chair of the department at DePaul, not to mention your partner and a kid?
Yeah, it's a lot. That I am a full-time college professor chair. I'm also an associate dean at my job. So I think that part of it is that I have a really amazing staff at Free Street who do a lot of the day-to-day work. Though yesterday I was folding programs and carrying stuff around. We're not a hierarchical organization, as you can imagine. I'm also very lucky that DePaul has a Vincentian mission, which really believes in service and the city as a classroom. So they've been very supportive of my work at Free Street. And Patrick Henry was actually a Goodman School alum, and the Goodman School became the theater school at DePaul University. So there's some really beautiful connections that lead to my boss, the dean, being very flexible with my schedule.
I love it that you're working with a social gospel-oriented Catholic institution.
I know.
I love it the most. Coya, you've always impressed me because of the entrepreneurial aspect that has always attached to your carrying out your theater career. And
what was that first theater? Bubblegum something?
Which Michael reminded me, and she doesn't want to be reminded of.
They rented the Heartland studio back in the day when she first came to town.
Well, that's fine, and you move on.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing a couple of performances at different spaces, and I was just so aware that, like us as business people, you had to create the scenes that house your performances, find spaces, make spaces that weren't maybe necessarily used as theaters before. Raising the money, raising the interest, the talent. Yeah. You have to do a very much of an organizer, business person's job.
Producer.
Yeah. In all of that. Do you have a cadre of like-minded souls who to go for and be your touchstone for both ideas, comfort, affirmation, criticism that you're willing to take, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, whether I want the criticism or not, the fact that we are a non-hierarchical organization in a lot of ways, I think I do have final say on a lot of what we do. Well, technically our board has final say on what we do, but they are very supportive. I really take seriously, because we hire artists from the communities that we're going to go to, it's really not for me to say what kinds of stories are important or mattering, in back of the yards where we have a space. So it's been really important to me to hire artists who are from those communities, to work with people who are intimately familiar with the neighborhoods that we're performing in, And
of course, that reflects your mission.
Yeah.
What you're describing. But that's not easy. That takes a lot of energy to create a space where people... Because it's unique and it's not what people know necessarily previously. Come in, be creative, tell your story.
Yeah, get in where you fit in is what I always say. I do think that my approach to theater does come from a kind of grassroots organizing background, which I have from the two of you, from all of my parents and the many amazing adults who helped raise this little village, rangy village of children in my generation. Yeah. I don't think it ever occurred to me. I do love the arts, capital A. When I was younger, I was obsessed with Shakespeare and the romantic poets.
Everyone should be for a
moment.
moment.
You went to St. Mary's College in Maryland, and didn't they have a Shakespearean department?
Shakespeare program.
That was the first time I saw you perform back
in there. That was in a Moliere show. But yeah, that's why I went to St. Mary's, is they had a focus on classical. work. But then I double majored in women and gender studies, or it was just called women's studies then. Now it would be called gender studies. And really, it's important to me to make theater that is connected to larger social justice efforts. I think that we have such opportunity as culture makers to help imagine a different world. And if we can imagine a different world, then we can organize and strategize towards it.
I was just going to ask you, Coya, how did you end up getting into theater?
Well, as you know, your father was a Broadway producer, and my aunt, your sister, was a member of the San Francisco Mime Troupe. But that's all stuff that kind of connected for me a little bit later.
Yeah,
it's probably in my
this other.
DNA somewhere. But I was a dancer for many years, not a very good one, and I got kicked out of tap class. They told my parents to I should seek a different form of artistic expression. Was the gentle way they did it. I kept running into the other girls. I had switched from ballet to tap and jazz because it seemed more interesting. And I was scheduled to audition for Performing Arts High School the next weekend, and I panicked and changed my audition to acting. And I got in.
Good
Amazing.
Move. Good move.
The rest
world
is
is
history.
glad.
Yeah.
Listen, Coya Paz, you are a gift to our city. All
Thank
of
you.
the work you've
To
been
humanity.
doing. Tell people.
That's going to be my pull quote. Coya Paz, gift to humanity.
There you go. Yeah, pull
Doing
that one
good in the
out.
world.
Tell folks where they can hook up with this.
Yeah,
event
find out where we
tomorrow.
go to see one of these 50 performances
The
tomorrow.
website or
Right.
whatever.
So we have a website, freestreet.org, that has an interactive map where you can click on your ward and see where we're going to be at what time. And we'll also be live streaming some of the performances there. And then we'll be live streaming all of the performances from our social media. Free Street at everything. Twitter.
And can you tell us where in the 49th Ward?
I can tell you where in the 49th Ward. We're going to be just outside of the farmers market, outside of the Red Line train at the Lunt entrance.
Oh my gosh.
All right,
couldn't
home
get
base,
closer.
right across
And
from the old Heartland.
And I want to tell you both that it's a little bit sad, but one of the things we've been doing as we work on Still Here, which is the larger project this summer, is asking people, what's still here, what's not, and what do we want to be. And the Heartland Cafe has come up in every single workshop as a place that people deeply miss and really show as a sign of the way that developers are shaping our city instead of the community. So I just thought I would share that. It really does come up all of the time.
Okay, so you're going to make us cry.
Sorry.
The full-length show called Still Here is something that is coming up in July and August.
Yes.
So, and is that also on the website?
Yes, all
Okay.
of our information is on our website.
And it's called Still_Here. So that I think will be fascinating because I know you've had conversations with literally hundreds of Chicagoans.
We've been trying to talk to everyone in all corners of the city.
That's terrific. Well, Coya, thank you so much for getting up
Thank you
early
for
with
having
us.
me.
And shine
Right on,
on,
Iha.
shine on, you crazy diamond.
Thank you.
Please stay tuned for more of Live from the Heartland. You're listening to WLUW Chicago 88.7 FM. A little more of the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. Hey, Rolling Stones. So our next guest is Chris Buddy, and where were you last night, Chris?
I was at the Rolling Stone show at Soldier Field.
Give us a little review, will you?
Pretty good. They sounded awesome. Good energy. They look old,
They do look old.
But it was awesome. Worth the price of admission. They brought out highlights for me were Paint It Black and Midnight Rambler, and then they did a nice run of Keith songs where Keith sang, which was pretty cool.
Sweet.
I last saw them at the Super Bowl.
That's the most amazing existence, is Keith. No, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I saw them at the Super Bowl in Detroit when Seattle played Pittsburgh, I believe.
The halftime show.
Yeah, halftime show. That's the
cool.
last time I saw him. But I did see him once at Soldier Field, probably with you and Thom, and way back. You've seen him a lot more, Kate.
Yep. I've seen him. I see him about every 10 years. Last night was the first time I haven't seen him in Chicago in a while. But
There's still Tuesday night. Is a possibility. Any extra tickets out there, let us know. Anyhow,
Sure.
Chris, we got you on because you have a new film out, and it's a film about gambling. And why don't you tell us a little bit about it? Because gambling is a big issue. We discuss it here now that we're going to have gambling in the city. This is a film about blackjack, and you were right in the thick of it.
I was right in the thick of it, thanks to I got to know very well kind of the top professional blackjack players in the country who beat the game of blackjack by counting cards, which is a legal method, playing within the rules of the game.
It is illegal?
It is legal.
It is legal.
Legal, but the casinos don't want to lose a cent, so they
Yeah.
combat against it, and it becomes this whole cat and mouse game of surveillance and counter surveillance and kind of bobbing and weaving in the casino and surveillance system. But so I met KC, whose father was an innovator of card counting, as I said, the way you beat the game.
His dad
tracking
was a gambler.
in the late 50s, early 60s, doing it before anyone knew what was going on. And they both won a significant amount, made a early career. They've both pivoted. But so I kind of followed the tail end of his career into casinos. We bought an RV and traveled the whole country, playing every casino basically in the country, and then also kind of wanted to balance out the whole film and got the casino side, the surveillance side, and kind of wanted the whole scope of the relationship.
It's actually a very impressive film.
And it's called Inside the Edge, a professional blackjack adventure.
And yeah, I mean, it's really well done. People would not imagine that such an interesting and kind of riveting piece could be made of just talking to gamblers, dealers, security guys, more gamblers, a few sheriffs, etc. It was fascinating because it was a whole separate world with new language and everything. You did a really good job.
Thank you.
And I asked you before about the graphics, and you had actually leaned on a couple of Art Institute students to help you out with that, which were also very impressive.
And they turned out great. Yeah, we contacted the School of the Art Institute's placement office, and they suggested 2 graduates who did a great job for us.
So what was the nugget? You knew JC from college.
Casey, yeah.
Casey,
Yep.
sorry.
No problem.
And what was the moment where you looked at each other or you looked in the mirror and said, I got to film this?
That's a great question because it's such a secretive group of people. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be known. They don't want the casinos to know them. So his whole career had been under the radar a little bit. He had done something where he did a little bit different than other people. If you've ever heard of the MIT guys, they were a team. They're the famous blackjack.
There's teams that do it, and then he's a lone wolf.
He's a lone wolf. So what he had done, which I don't know had been done before, I'm sure it's been done before, he said, I'm going to make a finite amount of time, and I'm going to make as much money as I can, and then move on to other things. So he was in the casino system and also getting comps, and they knew him. And then once they found out he was a skilled player, they turned on him. So to answer your question is, it took some convincing to let me put him on film because he's such a private guy. But as I saw his career winding down, and he'd call me and tell me these wild stories, and I said, man, that's a great story to tell. And also, when I look to do a documentary, 2 things are, has the story been told before? And I don't think it had, because a lot of things have been fictionalized. There's a movie version of the MIT team, which is kind of garbage, and we have the MIT guys in our movie telling kind of the real thing.
Yeah.
And the second thing I look for is, do I have access to something interesting?
Mm-hmm.
And with KC, once I convinced him to let me tag along, I was piped into the kind of the main energy.
Well, clearly, once you convinced him, he was jumped right in. Michael's friend Tapas actually made a couple observations. Michael, do you
Well, one thing he talked about, I mean, you talk about security in that, and the differences in security when you're in the States and when you're on an Indian reservation. And my friend Steve Tapas wanted to know how come Casey never got beat up, because you got some hairy situations, and you were there in one of them. They got a picture of you in Council Bluff, Iowa, and tell us a little bit about the kind of threats and the vibe around all this stuff, from people asking you for IDs and refusing IDs, et cetera, et cetera.
It's a whole, again, as I said, it's a whole cat and mouse game, which I think nowadays, I never felt unsafe. I kind of took a lot of my cues from KC, who'd been in it so long. But to your point of the Indian reservations, they said to us, you're no longer in the United States, you're not in the state of Michigan, so choose your next actions very carefully, which was a pretty significant threat.
Yeah, right.
But to the greater conversation of, I think, obviously, there was a time when, Vegas was lawless, obviously, and you would get taken out to the desert, and I'm sure, told you, if you do this again, you're going to stay here. Now corporations, big corporations all own these casinos for the most part. So if they were to do anything, I mean, it'd be a PR nightmare, to say the least.
Well,
so,
the police actually helped you in a few situations.
In a few situations they did. In other situations, I don't know if they made the film. And we filmed for so many incidents. It just became so mundane. I mean, to see him go through it, what he has to do to just play the game as anyone else wants to, walk into a casino, put a bet down, and make a decision. To see the lengths that he has to go to. But some casinos are pretty cool. There's kind of a little dance they do. They'll say, if they say you're a card counter, they'll first say, listen, if they're nice, if they're cool, they'll come up and say, you're welcome to any amenities in the casino, any other game, just no table games. We're going to back you off. If they're a little rougher on the edges, or if you push that, if you kind of come back in with a mustache and a disguise on, they'll then read you the Trespass Act and bar you from the property. And then if you come back, you can get arrested. That's how they...
Talk about being an actor and wearing disguises.
So KC, to kind of get, I mean, he's really well known, and what they do is they take your picture and they disseminate it with flyers. It's called a Be on the Lookout flyer, and they'll send it all around to the subscribing casinos.
And so you guys were trying to get ahead of them and skip states so that
exactly,
they wouldn't be able to.
But so they'll have a litany of pictures of KC, and then it became myself too through association, and they'll say, oh my God, these guys are in the area, these are their skills, and they kind of really ramp up and really get overexcited, kind of the security guard mentality. So KC, to combat that, we had a whole slew of disguises, and he can look very different by with a mohawk or a mustache and a beard. And
he really ran the gamut on disguises.
Yeah. Some of the gamblers that you interviewed on this, they were very fascinating pieces that those guys shared. The whole going through the facial recognition programs that these casinos now utilize.
Yeah. Oh, you grow a lot of facial hair, you can cover up the way that they measure the lines from your eyes.
Yeah, but you can't cover up enough.
Right. Eventually, you're going to get caught.
Yeah.
You're going to get nabbed by the security surveillance.
So it's really interesting in that, okay, gaming, which is the polite word for it, gaming is not really gaming, because if you get too good at the game, you get 86.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. I don't know if I could do that thing of being asked like hundreds of times, do you have ID, and continually be able to say, no, I don't have ID.
Yeah, it's remarkable, KC. I mean,
it's
and
amazing.
But that was another kind of impetus for me to get interested in his story, because he's so good at it and doesn't get rattled, and it's kind of has a little bit of a, wants to buck the system, wants to beat the system.
He's on the spectrum,
that's
dude.
The thrill of
he's
it.
on the flipping spectrum. He doesn't even blink.
He's bright. I mean, he's super sharp.
Clearly. I mean, did you get sucked in to play?
I didn't, because I had the luxury of seeing him along the way. And then, as you said, talking to these historians and authors and guys who'd been through it. Mm-hmm. Now I know enough to know that I don't know anything and not to stay away. I mean, I wouldn't, if you're going to go to Las Vegas and taking a show and a good dinner and you're saying, okay, I'll lose $100 or $200 on the weekend, that's cool. You can drink for free. But people definitely do get sucked in, and it becomes... It
ruins them.
So what are the ramifications of what you learned for what our new bill in the state of Illinois is going to bring gambling to Chicago?
I don't know. I'm a little suspect only in that I don't know that it's ever worked. People, they think this is this magic bullet in any city that, stack them with casinos and the taxes, and we're going to be saved. But I don't know that it's ever really worked.
Yeah, and one of the questions we have is aren't those dollars tapped out already, given that we've got in Rosemont and Indiana, very close. And even though, people might not have to take a bus for an hour to get to it.
People might come from other places, too, just get into Chicago. Because it's more fun to gamble here than probably in Indiana.
But what's the idea? They're going to have a couple more casinos, 3 more? I mean, what is it going to be, like a mini Vegas?
Oh, God, I don't know. I hate the whole idea. I'm very
I got to say
very
that
against
I did win some money in a slot machine once in Reno.
For about 5 minutes.
I lost some money when we invested it. Someone at the Movement newspaper, which we put out in the old days, knew a guy with a system, and we made money and put the paper out for a while, but then I ended up losing my money. And I was working in a film with Andy Davis down in Shreveport, and I did win maybe $400. I think it was probably,
you big time high roller, you
throwing dice. Well, as opposed to this guy hitting up close to $1 million.
Yeah, he's it's a lot of money at that level. But I would caution also, I don't think this movie will whet anyone's appetite to become a professional. It might. I mean, it's pretty.
Right.
But you need.
It was hard work.
It is hard work, and the skill set is. I could tell you about it quickly, but it's like learning a language. You need to immerse yourself, and then not only that, that's one part. Learning the skills and being able to do it.
But to have the capital.
The capital.
To do it.
The capital is everything, and also the high pressure situation of casinos. Kind of.
I mean, people. The amount of scenes in this movie where you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash which this
Big
guy
stacks of
basically has
moolah.
to. His problem is figuring out, how to move it and where to have it, and so that when they take over the RV, that was interesting that the safe was connected with the starter.
We
and he
couldn't get the bankroll out for a couple of days. But the RV breaks down at one point in Connecticut, and we were kind of stuck.
But you're right, and it does not romanticize the lone wolf poker player. I mean, he admits it. He goes,
Yeah.
I'm getting lonely.
Yeah.
He got
I
tired
got
of
to
it. He
go
went home
get
and
the
picked up
dogs.
his dog. So there are some other people in the movie. Tell us about some of the other people, whether they're talking about security, whether they're gamblers, other people that struck your fancy, so to speak.
So it is a pretty neat, tight-knit community, the Blackjack Hall of Fame, and luckily we got the majority of them on board to
Yeah,
kind of
that
share
was
their stories.
impressive.
So anyone from, there's authors, this guy Stanford Wong, who did a pretty seminal book. There's Max Rubin, the head of the Blackjack Hall of Fame. And then we did get, as you said, the Biometrica, the biometric software people to tell how they look for guys like KC and how they spot them, which is pretty cool.
Very cool
Yeah.
that you got all. I mean, you
what
covered
was
it.
the hairiest situation you found yourself in?
I think, mine would differ from Casey. Casey would say there were times where he would win, let's say, $60,000, and the casino just wouldn't give him his chips. And they'd make up some crazy rule and said, well, of course you have to have your Social Security card on you to cash these chips out, which is BS.
Did he ever get that money or no?
He did. That was the instance where we called the cops, and the cops escorted us back into the casino
to
to
cash
get
the
the money.
chips.
So that would, I think with him, that's the hassle that he runs through. That incident on the Indian casino where the guy threatened us, vaguely threatened us, I would say,
Yeah.
was a little. It definitely. I wasn't nervous per se, but I raised an eyebrow. Like, wow, okay, this guy's he's pretty serious about this.
What was it like for you going home to your home state of Connecticut and going up to the gambling parlors up north?
Yeah, I never really found much use for them, but I had
Thank
a
you.
nice dinner there, and so
I couldn't believe the way this guy go. Okay, so I'm going to fly to Atlantis in Bahamas, to take a break and make up a little of the money that he lost in the Midwest. The Midwest was not kind to this guy.
Right.
And it's just a lifestyle like most people would. I don't understand what you take from it at the end. If you still have money at the end and you can walk away, that's like a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
Because most people do not walk away from it with money in their pocket.
That was kind of another eye-opening thing for me, because I saw him, someone who's got the skills and dedicated the time to learn how to beat the game. And again, I will say the edge is not huge that you get. It's maybe a 1 or 2% edge that you get over the casino. That's why the capital comes into play. But we'd be in places in, Greenville, Mississippi, or, places that I couldn't even, like something Lake, California, and there'd be guys just betting over their paychecks, and it was, betting $5 chips, betting over their paychecks, and you're like, oh man.
That's tragic.
It really, it's really a bummer, because it's kind of the allure of winning is so strong,
Did you play cards as a kid? Did you do any gambling?
I didn't know. I was never the only
Go
thing.
fish?
I do like gin rummy, but the stakes are a little lower there. But
Especially when you're playing with Grandpa.
not to, as you said, we don't really romanticize the casino life and the gambling. But
No,
what I
no,
did,
no.
but what I did want to romanticize is a group of people who kind of are exceptional, who beat the system. That's kind of what my
Chris, buddy, you did that. You
Thank you.
actually accomplished that. What other films have you made that we could still find somewhere?
Sure. My first film, I should be out there on Amazon Prime. It's on Absinthe, the European liquor that was banned for 100 years that Van Gogh and Pablo Picasso and others drank. So that had a rich history.
Absinthe.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't
Did
know,
we talk about that on this show?
No, we didn't.
Oh.
How about telling us a little bit more about that? How did you get interested in a drinking film?
Yeah, so as you know,
You're just covering the vices,
yeah,
dude.
I'm checking out the vices. Let's see what's next. So my
I'm
mother was a
afraid.
French teacher, my brother's a French teacher, and so we were obviously at an early age.
Your mother, Betsy.
You got it.
She was my classmate.
So
Enough said.
Exactly. We obviously were turned on to impressionist art at an early age. So saw Absinthe, kind of spotted about these paintings and heard this
Yes.
kind of crazy mythical stories, which we debunk a little bit, the hallucinogenic effects and all that. But it was such a cool history. We went to France, Switzerland, New Orleans, and kind of documented the history of that notorious liquor that was banned. So pretty cool.
You're a very calm and kind of regular looking guy for having traveled the roads that you've just described to make just these 2 films.
Well, I'm a casual observer, I think that's what I'm not in them.
You're a professional casual observer.
Yeah, speaking of not being in them,
you're acting yourself, right?
tell us a little bit about how you filmed some of this stuff, because this is some heavy action in the film.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing that up, because I knew that if I couldn't show it, there's really nothing to see. No one wants to watch someone play blackjack. I mean, what could be more boring than someone cards turning over for 18-hour sessions? So I found these high-resolution button cameras, meaning it was literally a button in my shirt that I ripped out, and then the camera slid through, and there's a little receiver in my pocket to get all that clandestine in-casino footage. So we saw how these casinos and security guards treat winners and people who are beating the game legally. So the button camera was a big part of it, and obviously we got all that vetted by lawyers because the casinos don't want you filming. But
why did Casey eventually say, "Sure, let's do this," and allow his face to be shown and all that? Did he know he was heading to the end of his
he did,
career?
And what you see in the film is a grind. He had a great career in Vegas for, let's say, 6 months, where he was betting 3 hands by 5,000. You can make some really serious money there. When we wrapped up his career, as you'll see in the film, I mean, he could only bet $15 hands up to a couple hundred, and you'd make your hourly. These guys are so sharp. Like they only do it if it's worth it to them. The risk, the pay, the risk versus reward. So I think it just became such a grind. And he's a sharp guy. He's a master's in financial engineering from Berkeley, math degree from Tulane University. So he was always going to move on to other things as he has. I mean, he's just always got his hand in these crazy.
Can you tell us what he's doing now?
Yeah, he's still in. He's in gaming.
Because I don't want to blow it, but he does go back to do a little more gambling somewhere else.
Yeah, he's always gonna
with his dad.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
that was a little tragic to me.
Why?
I don't know. It's like dad and son out there.
I love that.
No, they love it. I mean, his dad was a gambler, and then they go on a trip together and they get into fights.
Yeah,
I know. That was very interesting.
I hear you if they weren't winning, but these are two guys who love beating the system together. Father
That's
and son.
true. They're healthy.
Yeah.
They're all together. It was funny when they were so competitive that they were just fighting over games that they were making up.
Oh yeah,
on the road.
That's the one thing. These guys are competitive. They love to beat the system. They love to win.
Is this showing anywhere where people could go out and see it yet?
It's pretty readily available. If you have video on demand through your cable provider, it'll be there. It'll be on. It is right now everywhere. It's on Amazon Prime Video, Amazon DVD and Blu-ray, iTunes Store. You can rent. I mean, you can rent it for like $3.99 on Amazon Prime.
You say in the movie that the advantage players, these guys who are really skilled, they got the capital, they got it going, that they're smarter than the house.
Yes.
Hey, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the direct quote, which I'll defer to the professionals who said it, is that the casino's watching someone else's money and the players are watching their own money. So they're always going to be up late figuring new ways to beat the system. And we show a couple of those ways in the movie that aren't particularly card counting per se. There are other ways to beat the game of blackjack, which are a little more advanced.
That 3-ace thing, that was so impressive.
It's pretty impressive.
Oh my gosh.
But that's not as readily available. That's a pretty exceptional circumstance that he happened upon.
Yeah, the shoe.
Yeah, the shoe, the sixth shoe.
And the whole card. Anyway, you guys got to see this flick. I am kind of anti-casinos, as you probably know if you listen to the show, because I think it's terrible.
And I always pipe in, well, I had a good time the couple times I went.
And I did go to the casino in Atlantic City, and I have put a few quarters in a slot machine.
Winnemucca, Nevada.
Oh, yeah, we were there. We were in Winnemucca.
So what are your plans? You, as a young filmmaker, I know you shoot some video over at the Hideout now and then.
I do.
At tell us what that is that you do?
Oh, well, that's the. I haven't done that a little bit, but the Ben Jarofsky and Mick Dumke show over at the Hideout first Tuesdays. Pretty cool. I did that just as a favor for them. But yeah,
what are your plans for new films?
Well, so we're writing a film now. The funny thing about documentary is it takes so much out of you. We came back with 900 hours of footage on this, which is because there was no other way to do it but to be a fly on the wall. And luckily, my editor Suzanne Sufferdin,
the woman on the show,
took great care and sculpted the story beautifully. But so I think I would caution. I mean, do it if you're young and got balls. But documentary film, if you're doing it verite style, fly on the wall, it's hard to get that story told, and because you got to take yourself out of your life.
All right, so do you have any plans for another one?
So we're writing a film now. Me, my business partners and I are writing a film right now, which maybe we can talk about next time.
Okay, good.
Wow, Chris, buddy, congratulations on another great accomplishment, and also for seeing the Stones
Inside
last night.
the Edge, a professional blackjack adventure. Look for it. You will enjoy it.
And thank you, Chris Buddy, for all your good work. And I can't wait to see what the subject matter is on the next one. I'm a little scared. But I really appreciate that you put me right into it in a way I don't think I could
Yeah,
have.
she didn't want to watch it, didn't
But
want to have you on the
you
show.
got-
What are we going to do gambling for? I said, no, it'll be interesting.
There's Michael saying more than he should. And we are here,
You're listening to Katie and Michael. Tom will be back in 2 weeks.
our buffer. We will be back next week with Gordon Thompson, Jim Denomi, and somebody talking about Pride Week. In between now and then, we want to thank everybody who makes this show possible. Jake Levy over there on the other side of the window, Lynn Orman, who we miss, and our best two. And Tom, keep on keeping on that road with Gene, and do good in the world.
World needs all the good that we do.
All power to the people.